Good afternoon. Welcome back to another edition of the B&H Virtual Event Space. You are tuned into pro tips on curating your digital photo collection with the photo managers. Of course, Kathy Nelson from the Photo Managers is back with another wonderful guest, Allison Freedman. Allison, Kathy, welcome.
Thank you so much, Derek. Excited for this topic today.
Always good.
Small topic.
Small time, nothing really to discuss here, right? Should be open 5-10 minutes. All right. Yeah. Allison's like, yeah, we can go for weeks on this. Well, look, Kathy, I'm going to turn it over to you. You've been doing such a wonderful job hosting this series. And I want to thank you once again and the Photo Managers for this wonderful month-long series that we have going on. So I'll get out of the way and let you ladies take over. But I will remind everybody, if you do have any questions, feel free to get them in. A special welcome to everybody joining us on YouTube as well. Don't forget to check out our new YouTube page, B&H Event Space. Just look it up there, easy to find. And if not, we'll point you in the right direction. So ladies, take it away.
Great. Thanks so much, Derek. Welcome, everybody, again. For those of you who've been here before, you know, and those of you who are new, my name is Kathy Nelson. I'm the CEO and founder of the Photo Managers. And we are excited to do this month-long series in the month of May, where I've asked guest experts who are professional photo organizers, there is such a thing, to come and share their wisdom on. So the last 2 weeks we started with legacy, and then we talked about with Marcy about printed photos. But now I asked Allison, because I know she's an expert presenter and a really great speaker on this topic, to kind of dive into pro tips on managing your digital collection. And if you're like everybody else and your phone, most of your photos are, taken on your phone in all sorts of other ways, this is a topic that everybody needs help with. So Allison, I'll let you take it from here.
Great. Thank you, Kathy. I am super excited to be here with the Photo Managers and B&H. I am just going to get my screen shared up here. Hopefully you can all see a title slide. And hopefully, I'm assuming someone will let me know if you can't, but
all good. Got it.
All good. Okay, great. So today we're going to talk about the tiny topic of curating your digital photo collection. Something you could probably cover in 5 minutes or about 50 hours. It's hard to say. A bit about me before I get started. My company is Arrange Wander Focus. It is just a few years old. I've always been interested in photos and photography. I have a fairly large collection, mostly of nature photos. So a lot of birds and animals that I keep in one place, and I've got over 100,000 probably of them. So I've always had a lot, and I have always kept them fairly well organized, because before I became a photo manager, I was actually a practicing attorney, which required a lot of organization. That was my former life, as I like to say, but now I'm a certified photo manager, which means that I have completed a whole lot of training and abide by the best practices and ethics in our industry. And there is a lot to learn and to teach on this topic. So today we'll be talking about taking control over your digital photos. It is huge. We'll just be getting our feet wet, but I hope that over the course of the next 45 minutes or so, I'll give you some tools and tips to get started working on your own collection. Why do we need to organize our photos? This is why. We take 1.72 trillion images a year, which is essentially an incomprehensible number. You can see on that chart, there's been a steady increase since about 2013 with a little blip during COVID, but now we're back in full force. We take roughly 54,400 photos per second. And in the US, that translates to our average is about 20.2 photos per day, which means that we have a lot of digital photos. And if you don't keep them in some kind of order, they could quickly and very easily overwhelm you. If you have, with my clients, to back up for just a sec, we often also bring their printed photos into their digital library. And so I highly suggest that if you have a lot of printed photos, you watch the replay of Marcy Brennan's talk from last week, where she talked about how to get control over your printed photos. because today we are going to focus just on the digital images. So, do you feel with your digital images like you are down here? When people look at their photos, they think there's no way I can tackle that. It is insurmountable. It will just take forever. I have too many. But with a little, maybe a lot, depending on where you're starting from, of effort, you can get them into shape and create a truly accessible, searchable, and secure photo library that allows you to enjoy your photos on a daily basis. And that is always my goal when I'm helping people with this, is the reason we take photos is to remember and to enjoy. So think about that for just a minute. Wouldn't it be great to have all of your photos accessible to you so that you can find whatever you want whenever you want it? So if you feel like you are here, keep listening. Last year, I joined my cousin on a 2-day, 100-kilometer charity walk. And this was just one of our hills on day one, somewhere around the 40-kilometer mark. And it reminds me a lot of taking control over your photos. It can be a rough start, lots of highs and lows along the way, but it will be worth the effort in the end. So by the end of the talk, I hope to have you here. We did, in fact, get up that hill. And while it wasn't nearly as bad as it looked from the bottom, we felt a massive sense of accomplishment and relief, honestly, once we hit that spot. And it was absolutely breathtaking. So there's that as well. So I am not here today to tell you that there is a way you can snap your fingers and poof, all of your photos will be curated, cleaned out, and organized. At least not if you want to do it yourself. But it is doable. And you may actually enjoy the journey because it will force you to put eyes on those photos and memories that you may not have seen in quite a while. So my goal today is to give you the tips and tricks to get you started and a roadmap that you can follow to get you to the end. While this is a presentation on curating your digital collection, you can't do that without knowing what you have. So tip number 1 is to figure out what do you have and bring all of it into one spot. If the vast majority of your photos are on your smartphone, you can take a brief nap now and join me for tip 2. But if you're like most people, you have photos in a lot of different places. I've listed some of these places on the slide, different cloud services, your camera cards, old camera cards that might still be sitting in an old camera, external drives, CDs, DVDs, phones, lots and lots of places your digital photos could be hiding. So the first thing to do is figure out, where are they? And don't forget to check your junk drawers and photos in texts and emails. On your texts, if you have an iPhone, you can click on the sender's name and scroll down and find all the photos that have gone back and forth between you. So you might want to find those as well, as there are photos in there you probably want to save. Also, before you begin, as you start looking and thinking about where your things are, is you need to create a place to put them. So I suggest you purchase or repurpose an old external hard drive that is twice as big as you think you might need. Usually I suggest 2 terabytes because you kind of get the most bang for your buck there. But unless you have, that'll be a perfect size. Unless you have over 100,000 or so raw photos, this would be more than enough space for you. So you want to have a drive where you can bring everything together and allow you space to work, and then allow you space to keep your photos when you're done. So this is if you are somebody who took your nap because all of your photos are on your phone and nowhere else, it's time to wake up, because we're going to get into the meat of it now with tip number 2, which is don't be afraid to delete. I'm a big deleter for some categories of photos, and it is really the only way that you can keep your photo library, your digital library, functional. So there's 2 different types of deleting that I see. One is the easy stuff, the exact duplicates. Nobody needs 2 or 3 or 4 or 10 of literally the exact same photo. But I guarantee that anybody watching today has at least a few of these exact duplicates. I have actually cut some libraries fully in half by just removing these exact ones. So where did these come from? Often they come from backing up without a clear strategy. So if you are somebody who at one point backed up all your photos, copied everything onto an external drive, and then a year later, perhaps forgot that you had done it, or you can't find it, so you do it again, and then you do it again, and you keep repeating. And so you end up at some point with, 4 drives and 6 copies, but not of everything, and you really just don't know what you have anymore. So that is the time to start actually going through and deleting those duplicates. So how do we do it? Contrary to popular belief, you do not have to actually sit down and compare one photo to another. You don't have to look through your library thinking, I've seen that photo somewhere, where is it? There is some great software out there, inexpensive software that can scroll through your library for you and find all of those exact duplicates. So there's some options on the screen. Photo Sweeper is great if you are a Mac family or person. Duplicate Cleaner Pro if you are a PC user, and Dupe Guru, which works on both. They all work essentially the same way, but by going through the catalog of your library and looking for your duplicates and then showing them to you so you can make some decisions. If you are a cloud user, so if you keep all of your photos in Google, for example, you will have to either download them all first or ignore them, because there's no way to actually compare that library or use that library with these types of software. But if you are an Apple user and you have an iPhone, Photo Sweeper can actually just bring in your whole Apple library without you having to export it at first. So if you're an Apple user, I suggest taking a look at Photo Sweeper. What does it look like? Here is one example. This is Photo Sweeper, and I ran it on my own library last week. So even photo organizers, we're just like you. We have duplicates also. And it pulled up, you can see a few sets there, but the one in the middle is 4 copies of this one photo. They're all exactly the same. I know it's small on the screen, but they're the same size. Everything about them is the same. And there's no reason for me to keep all 4 of these photos. So with a program like this, I can fairly quickly go through and eliminate those exact duplicates right off the bat. Step 1 is, and then we can move on to the harder stuff. So everybody should start here and get rid of these first. There is one additional duplicate remover, which you are an Apple user, that might be helpful to you. It is fairly new, so if you've not seen it or you don't see it after we've gone through the slide, you might need to update your phone and your Mac in order to find it. But Apple has now a built-in duplicate remover so that you can identify the exact duplicates that are on your camera roll in your Apple library. And one interesting thing about this program is it actually will merge the metadata. What does that mean? We're not going to do a deep dive into metadata today. That would be an additional hour or 5. But the metadata is the equivalent of the information written on the back of your photo. So it's the where, the when it was taken, any other information you might have added, what camera you used, etc. So one nice thing about this Apple duplicate remover is that it will find these duplicates and actually merge that information into the copy that you've decided to keep. One quick tip on that is just to be wary of the dates. Apple will keep the photo with the later date. So if that is important to you, then you just need to be aware and choose appropriately. Where do you find this magical tool? On your iPhone, go to Albums and Utilities, and it's down there. On the Mac, it's usually on the left-hand side towards the top. So, give it a shot, see how it works. Like I said, if you don't see it, you may need to update your software and then you'll find it. So that's the easy part of removing the duplicates. The harder part are all of the additional photos that are similar, but not exactly the same. And you need to decide, do you want to keep them? And this is also where you need to start thinking about what you want in your photo collection, what you want your photo legacy to be. What do you want to save for others? What do you want to save for yourself? 10 years from now, are you still going to want that particular photo? So think about what you enjoy about your photos and what your legacy is as you go forth and try and start curating your library and removing photos that you don't want. And there are two main methods that I use to curate a library, to remove photos that, perhaps don't need to be saved. They are to either pick the keepers or delete the duds. They are essentially the same thing, but there's a different mindset involved. So I'm going to do some quick examples of each, and then you choose what you think will work for you. So the first one, my first technique, is to pick the keepers. This often works best for non-people pictures because we're less likely to need or feel the need to scrutinize every last detail of the photo. So I mentioned at the beginning, I take a lot of nature photos. I take a lot of bird photos. And if any of you have ever tried to take photos of birds in flight, you take a lot of photos to try and get that right, especially if you're using burst. So when I took this picture last weekend, there were probably 100 that looked almost identical to this one because I had it on burst. But I certainly don't need them all. So for pick the keepers, I essentially flip through quickly and just find the one photo that looks sharp. I don't need to look at all of them. There could be 10 that are sharp. If I'm really lucky, there's 20 that are sharp. I just need one. So once I find that particular one, I just delete the rest. So these poor Caspian terns, I only kept one of them because I found it pretty quickly. It was sharp. I deleted the rest without even looking at them. Like I said, this type of technique works best for non-people photos. These birds are not smiling. There is not going to be one where there is a better expression than any other. So you don't need to look at them very closely. This technique also works really well for things like landscapes, sunsets, sunrises, where they essentially are going to be very similar and you don't really need to examine them all to figure out what you want to keep. On the other hand, the other technique that I use is delete the duds. So this is a technique I am more likely to use when there are people in the photo with different expressions or pets, because if anybody who knows me knows how much I love my dog, and I don't like deleting photos of my dog because he's so cute. So this strategy of deleting the duds might work better in these instances where I scroll through and I delete things that are fuzzy or out of focus, or, he's not looking at me, or things like that. It is a slower process and you will likely keep more of your photos using this method. But if you really want to look at all of them, then this is the way that you are going to need to go. You can't just mass delete like you can when you are picking the keepers. I will say that you shouldn't stress over picking that one photo. If you love them all, keep them all. But take a look at them and think about, do you really need them all? Or in the case of pets, these pictures on the screen, I probably have taken 50 additional pictures at various times that look almost identical to these. So I probably don't need to keep them all. But I am not here to tell you that one technique is better than the other, or that you should only keep a certain number of photos. You need to keep what you need to keep. So what you need for your enjoyment or what you want to give to others. That's what you should keep. Everybody's different. There are some categories that are very easy to delete. These are screenshots, out of focus photos, burst photos, mistake photos, where you don't realize that you're taking pictures, parking spaces, products and shopping photos that you take a quick pic to send to someone, transient photos that you only need in the short term. A lot of people would put landscape, sunset, sunrise photos in this category because for a lot of people, if you go back and look at these 10 years later, you don't care so much about those landscapes. But these are all categories where if you go back and look at them, you either won't remember why you took them in the first place, or you don't need them anymore. They serve their purpose. So a lot of times you can clear out a fair number of photos by just going through these categories. For transient photos, you're out shopping, and I needed some sneakers for my son the other day. So I was at a store, I took some pictures, I sent them to him, said, which one of these do you want? He told me, and then I deleted them. In fact, I deleted most of those photos before they even hit my camera roll. So there's another one. You just don't need to keep those. There are also a category of photos that you don't really need to keep in your camera roll, that you can keep them somewhere else. And you shouldn't be afraid to get rid of these either. Some of these that I see a lot are books that you want to read, shows you might want to watch, recipes are a big one. These are great categories of photos that don't need to be on your camera roll and might be better off stored in a notes app or something similar. Another category of these, important documents. So by important documents, I mean your license, your insurance card, if you need to upload that for, a new doctor, something like that, a passport, if you're traveling. These are documents that I would argue should never be in your camera roll. They should not be in any part of it. And in fact, they should be kept somewhere like a password manager, for example, LastPass or Dashlane or something else that has two-factor authentication. But you can also, if you really want them just on your phone, you can stick them in your Notes app. The Notes app on Apple allows you to set a password that is different from your phone password. So that is a good option, a good place to keep them. I know there are other apps that work like that as well, but you really don't need them in your camera roll. You don't want to accidentally send them somewhere they shouldn't be. If somebody gets your phone and they get into it, you want a second layer of protection for documents like that. So I would take those out and put them somewhere else, which again helps slim down your camera roll. So extra bonus there. So a few additional pro tips for curating these photos. If you have a lot and you think it's insurmountable, do it in small chunks. For example, if you're a coffee drinker and you every Sunday morning sit down and have your cup of coffee and take your time, open up your camera roll and clean out the prior week. Or right after you take a group or some selfie shots, save the best one and delete the rest before they settle into and start to bloat your camera roll. And also take photos with intention if you can, so that you have fewer photos to begin with and fewer photos to delete later. An additional tip I didn't put on here, but something I've been doing for years is when I have a few minutes, if I'm sitting in the car waiting to pick up a kid from soccer practice, I will open my camera roll and I will search for that particular day, so May 16th, and it will pull up in Apple, and I think Google does this as well. It'll pull up all of the photos I've ever taken on May 16th from any year, and I'll go through and clean those out. And then the next time I have the opportunity, I'll do the same thing. And eventually you'll hit every single day, and you can get rid of a lot of photos that way. So now that you have hopefully deleted a lot of your photos, or at least know what you need to do to delete your photos, we get into the fun part. And this is my very favorite part of photo organizing. is using keywords and captions as well as albums and collections to keep things tidy. I'm a huge keyworder. Every bird in my photo collection has a location, a date, and a name because I like to keep track of when I saw them and where. I realize that makes me a little bit of a geek, but I'm just rolling with it. But it makes my library, photo library, truly functional because I can look up, if I'm curious about when the ruby crown kinglets are going to arrive in Chicago, I can look back and search, and I can get that day so that I know when they arrived last year and the year before. And that you may have additional things like that you want to find. So keywords and captions are great for that. Albums are essentially like saved searches, groups of photos that you want to keep together. Now, some photo storage programs have artificial intelligence that will help you with this. You can search bird or soccer in Apple or in Google, and you will find birds and soccer and certain pets in your collection. So that's also helpful. It's not quite as specific as ones you would put in yourself, but they are helpful. So some useful keywords and captions for the average person, in case my birding example did not resonate with you: people, events or gatherings, birthdays and holidays, pets, certain locations or travel, things you want to remember about any given photo. So here's an example: Joe's first time riding a bike might be a caption. In that picture there, the caption might be Anna's hummingbird feeding babies, but the keywords would be Anna's hummingbird, bird, nest, babies, eating, favorite. So think of captions as a way to tell a story behind a photo, and think of keywords as additional individual search terms that you can use to help find it. I do this a lot for other things that you might collect. I had a client who collected autographs and then took photographs of every single one. So she would have a keyword that said autograph, and then she would have a caption that said who it was an autograph of, who wrote it. Again, some popular sites like Google and Amazon will have AI that can help you with searching for things like this. But those sites also, they don't necessarily allow for keywords and captions, so you need to rely on that AI. If you want to keep your photos future-proofed in case you want to remove them and put them somewhere else, I suggest adding keywords and captions before actually uploading your photos to any of these other photo sites, because you won't be able to do it in them if you're using certain ones. And we'll talk about that a little bit later, which ones allow it and which ones do not. Certain programs that can be used to add keywords and captions that I've used are Adobe Lightroom, Adobe Bridge, Mylio, and Apple Photos. All allow you to add right away, and they will stick to your photos and stay with your photo. Can't go into how those work, but maybe at additional times there'll be some other workshops on something like that. Albums and collections also help to make your photos searchable. They are essentially collections of virtual copies. So you're not creating a second copy that you would need to delete later when you are creating an album. You're essentially telling your program just to point to certain photos and put them together for you. And pretty much every photo storage site or solution that I have seen allows you to create these albums. They're called albums in some and collections in others, so I'm using them kind of interchangeably here. But some of my favorite ones that I've created or created for clients: favorite photos of my family members. I take a lot of photos of my kids, but some are much better than others, so I keep those in one spot. My pets, obviously, my birds, obviously, but also travel, events or parties. I've seen a lot of people put together albums for COVID just because it was such a momentous event. First day of school is another good one. Official school photos, or photos you might want to use for something else. So it's May, it's graduation season. If you have thought about putting together a slideshow or some kind of picture present for a graduate. Wouldn't it have been great if you had started collecting these photos in an album called Graduation last year? Because then they'd already be there. And all you would have to do now is create the product that you want to use. So there's so many different ways to use albums and collections. So just think about what kinds of things you like to keep together, and start now. You don't need to, and as you're cleaning out your photos, you can go back, and as you come across photos that you want to add to an album, there they are. You don't necessarily have to go back and search, because you're doing that as you're cleaning out your photos. Now, one last note about albums and collections: in photo storage sites, these do not stick to the photo. And what I mean by that is, if you were to take a collection and download it, it can't recreate itself on a different photo site. You have to recreate it. So if you want to future-proof your photos, one suggestion is after you create an album, add a keyword with that album name, so that later on, if you ever are in a different photo site and you want to recreate it, you have those photos easily searchable and you can pull them together pretty quickly. And tip number 4 deals with choosing the right storage solution. Where are you going to keep your photos when you have them all organized? This, I can easily spend another hour or 5 on this topic, and I have on occasion. Most people don't think about where their photos are stored beyond the fees that they are paying to store them. But that's like renting a house without confirming that it has a kitchen, and then being upset when you can't make dinner, because you need to pick the right space that has what you need to make your photos truly enjoyable or to pass on as a legacy. So you need to think about what is most important to you in terms of your photos. Is it that you want to be able to access all of your photos from all of your devices? Do you want artificial intelligence to help you search? Do you know already that you will never take the time to keyword, or at least not keyword very much? So you might want artificial intelligence to help you with that. Or are you a keyworder? Do you want to add keywords and captions? Then you need a program that will support that, because not all of them do. Do you want to be able to make albums and collections? Most storage solutions will do that. But if you are, for example, just storing your photos on an external drive and nowhere else, that's very hard to do, because you can only have one photo in one spot in that case, if you're not using some type of photo storage site. Are you concerned about privacy and the cloud and where your photos might be or who might have access to them? Do you want to share your photos? Do you want to share them just a few at a time via text or email? Or would you like to be able to create a gallery that you can share? At the holiday time this year, I sent out a card that had a QR code that attached to some photos from a recent vacation that I was able to do because of the storage site I was using. Not all storage sites will allow you to do that. So you need to think about all of these. And then, of course, is price. And a word about price. And this might ruffle a few feathers, but I will never, ever suggest keeping your primary copy of your photos on a free photo storage site. Why is that? Because if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. And free photo storage sites don't owe you anything. They can change their policies at any time, and they can delete your photos whenever you want. So it's one thing if you're uploading photos to a site like that for printing or a specific project, but do not keep your actual library there without having other copies that will survive should that site decide to end their free program or end their program altogether. Free is never really free. If you're not paying for that product, then you are the product. So be very wary of free sites that say, we'll keep your photos forever in full resolution so that you don't have to worry, because those places, they don't exist. So where then should you keep your photos? Here are some of the photo storage solutions that I've used with clients. One that's not on here is just keeping them on an external drive, which you can do. They're a little bit harder to access that way. So I prefer to put clients and I actually use all of these sites to some extent because I need to know how they work. But these are my favorite. All of them have pros and cons. With all of them, you can create different albums and collections. You can store and access your photos on multiple devices. You can email and text and share with others, although the extent and how you do that differs between them. And all of them I would consider fairly safe in terms of privacy. They're not going to take your photo data and stick it up on a billboard without your knowledge. So they're relatively safe in that regard. And here, this text I know is really small, but I am asked this question all the time, is what sets these apart and how on earth do you choose one over the other? So if you go back to the list I had earlier, things like access, privacy, AI, keywords, think about what is most important to you, and then take a look at these different sites and see, do they have it? And you may need to rank them because I have yet to find the perfect solution for me or for anyone, but some of these are really good. Some examples of how you might choose. If you are an all Apple family, you have an iPhone, your partner has an iPhone, and you have a Mac, then you might want to just stay in Apple Photos. It's a great program. It has AI and facial recognition, map view. You can add keywords, all sorts of things. But if you are mixed, you have a PC and a Mac, or you don't love your Apple Photos or whatever, you might want to consider something else like Mylio, which is not even cloud-based. So, and easily can go from platform to platform. Doesn't matter whether you're on a PC, have an Android phone, or if you have an iPhone or a Mac. You can take a look at what is important to you and which of these has what you need. If you like to share beautiful full galleries of photos, then you might want to look at SmugMug, where you can literally create your own family legacy website where you keep your photos and collections and can share with whoever you want. So take some time to think about it. A lot of people don't. They just use the default on whatever phone they're using, but take some time to think about it because this is your legacy. It's all of the important moments in your life, and you only want to do this once and put them somewhere where you can keep them forever. So tip number 5, which is probably the most important tip of all, is because regardless of where you store your photos for your everyday enjoyment and access, you must have a backup system in place. This is key. I cannot stress this enough. The need for backups and the need to have control over your own photos has never been greater. In the last few months, several photo storage sites have shut down, deleting photos and removing access. And I've seen many stories of people who did not have a copy anywhere else, and they lost an entire lifetime of photos. This also holds true for important documents. You need to have a copy of all of this that you control, that nobody else controls. So I believe Marcy also talked about this in her seminar on printed photos, but you should have 3 copies of all of your photos and videos on 2 different types of media, meaning, in the cloud or on a hard drive, on a computer or an external drive, with one of them off-site, meaning not where the rest of them are. So you don't want to have, for example, 3 external hard drives with all of your photos and all of them sitting in your house, because if your house burns down, then you've lost all of your photos. You don't want to have, even if you have your photos stored on your computer and then you have 2 external drives and those 2 external drives are in your house, you have 3 copies, but again, your house burns down and your photos are gone. So it's really, really important to have these 3 copies and to have them spread out so that essentially if one of them goes missing for whatever reason, you still have full access to all of your photos. A quick word about backup versus sync, because there's a lot of confusion. People think, well, all of my photos are in iCloud, so I have them everywhere, so they are fully backed up. That's not exactly true, because iCloud and Google and others are actually syncing services, which means that if you make a change on one of your devices, that change is represented on all of your devices. So if I make a change to a photo on my phone, on my iPhone, then when I go to my Mac and pull up the photo, I can see the change that I made, which is great for everyday use and access. But if I were to accidentally delete those photos off my phone, they're also deleted in iCloud and then they're gone. iCloud does have 30 days. It keeps everything for 30 days. So if you realize your mistake, you can recover them. But it's something that you need to be aware of, is that if on platforms where you make a change and the change is reflected everywhere, that's not a true backup. It's a sync. A backup is one way only. So that once the photos, say I take a photo with my phone and once it goes into another place, doesn't matter whether I delete it off my phone. That is actually a true backup. So let's look at some options. So we're getting towards the end here. Automatic is best once your collection is curated. So here are some options that are good and can help back up your photos automatically. Backblaze and programs like it will back up your entire computer, including your photos, and it runs all the time in the background. Time Machine, if you are a Mac user, will do the same, and it will back up your photos so long as you are setting them on your computer, on your Mac, to save originals, which is in the settings in the Photos app. And then some others, a little bit lesser known, is pCloud, which is a cloud service, storage service that also actually has options to back up folders on your computer. It can back up your camera roll. It can even back up Google Drive and OneDrive and Dropbox as a little aside, and that can be super helpful. And then there's a lot of photo storage solutions that I talked about earlier that where you can turn on, if you want, an auto backup setting where it will automatically upload every photo in your camera roll. Of some that I mentioned earlier, Mylio is a completely different beast compared to the others. And with Mylio, it's actually really easy to keep backups, keep backups up to date on multiple different hard drives, all at the same time. It works in a very different manner, but that can be really, really helpful. Amazon Photos, which I mentioned earlier, a lot of people don't realize that with your Amazon Prime membership, if you have it, it will also store an unlimited number of photos. So I often suggest that for clients, no matter where your photos are, if you're comfortable with it, also have them upload to Amazon, because it is essentially a free backup if you're a Prime member. And it is, but even though it's free, it's your secondary copy. So if for some reason Amazon were to take away that program, you'd still be okay because you have them elsewhere. But you might as well take advantage if you are a Prime member. And then finally, make a plan. Back up at regular intervals. Set a calendar reminder for every quarter or every 6 months or whatever works for you, and try and stick to it. So, for example, if you sit down every Sunday and clean out the photos from your prior week, then go ahead and turn on the uploads to whatever backup service you're using, if it's not automatic. And then keep one copy of your drive on an external drive and keep that unconnected and somewhere else, so that if something were to happen, you have that copy. And just, every once in a while, maybe you have 2 drives and you swap them out every 6 months so that they can be updated. And one little quick tip on that, if you're using an external drive, is name the folder with the date of the last photo that you added to it. So that if I were to back up today, I would name it 2023-05-16 backups, so that I know that I need to add everything starting May 17th and forward to that drive. So that was a lot. I've only scratched the surface, but hopefully have given you a bit of a roadmap to use. Note that it's not the end. You'll notice that the picture that I'm using here is at kilometer 99. We did actually make it to kilometer 100, but why didn't I use the 100? Because keeping our photos tidy and organized will always be a moving target, as we're still taking more photos. But once you clean up the backlog, maintaining and moving forward is much, much easier. And hopefully you won't look as tired as I do in this photo. So here's information about me if you ever want to reach out. I have lots of tips and tricks on my blog and in social media. So come and follow and find me there if you'd like. And thank you to B&H and the photo managers for having me. Nice. And that's it. There we are.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Allison. Kathy, I don't know if you wanted to jump on the Q&A, or what do you want to do?
Oh, I'll let you go ahead and go for it.
All right, perfect.
Great questions. Great job, Allison.
It's a big topic.
It's a big topic. Yeah.
You got the heavy lifting today. We're over here just like
I did.
Yeah. So let's dive into the questions. I'm gonna jump on 2 of these for you real quick. From Ava joining us on Vimeo. I'm guessing when you were referring to camera roll, you're talking to the actual camera roll in your phone. So not a hard drive, not an external hard drive. We are talking camera roll as commonly referred to in the iPhone world, of your actual folder of images on your phone. And then burst photos for you, Ava, are shooting in burst mode or continuous shooting mode, where you're firing off more than one image in rapid succession. So quick housekeeping things there. Now we'll get into some deeper dives on the questions here. John joining us on Vimeo is asking, do you recommend backing up on CDs or DVDs at all? No,
absolutely not. And the reason is it is an old technology. So for one, they don't last very long. 2, most people don't even have CD or DVD drives anymore. And 3, the technology is old. They're not going to be supported for that much longer. They don't hold a lot either. Our photo collections these days are much, much bigger, and every photo that we take is much, much bigger. So you wouldn't be able to fit a whole lot on there, even if you did use them. So no, I suggest an external hard drive is probably the best place to keep them now.
Mm-hmm. And if I can throw in my 2 cents on that, solid state drives.
Mm-hmm.
And if you start looking into the bigger, more expensive, your RAID drives and your NAS storage, for those of you who have a lot of storage to do. The one thing with spinning drives, as you may find, or I have found, if you drop them, if you bump them, there's moving parts inside. Something can get bent. You try it, it doesn't read, your computer doesn't read it. And while your computer is trying to read it, a disk is spinning. And if something is out of whack, it is like a needle on a record, and it's just scratching your drive and decreasing the chance that you can ever recover those files. So even for people who are using the older style external hard drives that have spinning parts in there, it's kind of no different than a CD on the inside. So it's kind of the same thing, I think, for CDs. I've moved everything over to solid state drives, which I have found is a lot more secure. I don't know if you ladies have any thoughts on that topic, spinning drives versus solid state.
Yeah, I mean, I actually just got a RAID recently, so that's where all of my stuff is. But what I usually suggest, because external spinning drives, as you're calling them, they are a little bit less expensive. So generally, I will say, if it is an external drive that you're not taking anywhere, it's going to sit on your desk then I think it's fine. If you are traveling around with it, sticking it in a backpack, moving with it, then a little solid state drive is a better option.
Perfect. Yes. Well stated. I think everybody has that 4 terabyte desktop drive that just sits there. Mine is like gaffer's tape to my desk, so it doesn't go anywhere. Question from Merle joining us on Vimeo. Do the photo storage solutions allow for obsolescence and transfer to survivors?
Some do.
Okay.
So I know I didn't, like I said, I could have talked for hours about the different options. And I figured if you really wanted to, you go back to the replay and pull up that slide and take a look at the text underneath. So some of them do. Forever is a good example of that. They actually have legacy controls that you can set. You can set an account manager. You can, and then decide what happens to your photos later. For the most part, the others are, with the exception of Mylio, which I'll put aside for a second, the others are subscription based. So in terms of legacy, you really, they don't pass to anybody, but you do want to make sure somebody else has your login so that you have it. And then Mylio isn't cloud. They don't store anything in the cloud. So the photos there are actually stored right on your own external drives or on your computer. So in terms of legacy, it's essentially, you can just hand that drive over, you know, someone will find it on your desk and there it is.
Perfect. Marcelino joining us on Vimeo, asking a very popular question. How many catalogs have you created from your collection of photographs?
How many catalogs? You mean, I'm not sure.
So I'm guessing this is referring to
Lightroom?
in Marcelino. Yeah, if you could specify.
Okay.
I know we always get a ton of questions when it gets into cataloging. It's like, are you doing multiple catalogs or?
So if we're talking about Lightroom, which would be my guess, I have just one for my own photos. I keep everything in one Lightroom catalog. When I work with clients, I create separate ones for them, but I find it much easier to have everything in one place. And there's no real reason for me to separate in different catalogs. It just gets confusing.
Okay. And Marcelino also asking about printing. Do you print any of your photos? And if so, how much do you narrow down what you print versus just store digitally?
I do print. I don't print a lot to put in frames, but I make books. I still am a big believer in photo books. So I make books of my travels. I've made a couple of my birds just for me, not as a gift. Nobody wants them. And then that is really hard. I actually think that you are better served by just pulling out the best and really trying to narrow it down. So for example, if you're going through your photos and you decide now is the time and I am going to take control and get rid of the junk, as you do that, take the time to star or favorite the ones that are really, really special. Because obviously you'll keep more photos than are your favorites. You know, there's a lot of different ways to create books. I like to just pick a few photos, you know. Maybe if I was doing a bird book, I would pick my best photo of each bird and put it in there. I wouldn't go overboard on that. But again, that's really different. It depends on the purpose of your book too, or the purpose of what you're printing.
Totally. Rob joining us from England. Welcome, Rob, from across the pond.
Maybe he recognizes that hill.
Oh, is that from over there?
Yeah, it's from England. It's the Jurassic Coast.
There you see. Look, I'm like, wait, is that New Jersey?
No, not New Jersey.
Rob is asking, with Mylio, do you need to keep the PC or hard drives switched on all the time to access them from devices?
No. So this, again, another hour or 5 describing how that works. But essentially, you can have everything on all of your devices. But what will happen is if you're looking, for example, from your phone, it will keep just thumbnail copies on your phone, which is fine most of the time. If you actually wanted to go in and do some serious editing, you would need to have one of your hard drives on and connected in order for it to pull the original that you can edit with. But otherwise, you don't need to keep them on. You turn them on every once in a while to make sure that they are all in sync, but you don't need to keep them. And in fact, with the clients, I have a couple clients using Mylio, and I suggest they keep one of their drives off and disconnected and swap it out every once in a while to update and sync.
Okay, perfect. And Rob says, referring to the photo, Dorset, is that Dorset? Yeah. There you go. Rob, you nailed it. Well, look, ladies, I want to thank both of you. Oh, it looks like, hold on. We had some more questions sneak in. I will state for everybody, since Irina is asking here, this and all of our other content is archived. If you have Facebook, you can just look up B&H Event Space on there. Vimeo, vimeo.com/BH Event Space. And now we're having everything is going to be archived on our new YouTube page. So if you look up B&H Event Space on YouTube, you can also locate it by going to B&H's main YouTube account and going into our, I believe it's a channels, channels segment there. So
I just went into YouTube and put B&H Event Space and it popped right up and I just subscribed. So
there you go. So it works. Good.
It's working, yes.
Kathy is proof that it is there. It does work, and you can find our content. We're slowly starting to add our archive content there, and of course, all of our live content is going to be airing there and remain online there. So pick your poison, whichever site you want to look on best. Rob joining us here on Zoom is asking or saying, I like ChronoSync for backups. It keeps track of what you don't need to remember that, and incrementals go quickly. Well,
yeah, I can't list everything. There's a lot of programs out there, but just choose something. If you get nothing else out of this talk, pick something and back everything up.
Stick, right. And the other advice would be pick one and stick with the one that you picked to learn it, instead of you get, kind of running after new shiny objects or things like that too, right? You want to then become an expert in one and not have your stuff, which I have been guilty of. Oh, let me try this, let me try that, and then it's like maybe you just got to get to one.
That's why I suggest really thinking about it at the beginning. You don't have to stick with whatever's already set up for you on your phone. Think about the different factors and what you actually want, and do a little research on it and see what has what you want, and then yes, put some stuff in there and let it go for a while, let it germinate, and make sure that that's what you want and that's what you know how to use.
Perfect. Ladies, wonderful advice. I will remind everybody this is going on every week for the month of May. Next Tuesday, we have Isabella Dervo joining us with the photo managers. We're going to be talking about pro tips on sharing your best photos and videos. And then the following week, turn your love of photos into a business. We all want to make some money, don't we? With Barbie Bittner, Paul Einerson, and the photo managers. I think we might have, is Yakov joining us on that?
Yakov,
we do. So there we go. We got a little close to home there with Yakov joining us as well. So I want to thank you, ladies, of course. Another great week of information, and we dropped some links in there. Please always check out and support our speakers. They do this for love of what they do and to get all of you people out there educated on what their area of expertise is. So go show Allison some love, show the photo some love. If you guys have any questions that you either didn't think of or they pop up as soon as we log off, we drop the links there for you guys to follow them there. And that's it. That's all we got. Another round of the B&H virtual event spaces in the books. We'll see the photo managers and you all next